Going how it's supposed to go. Yo, good. I'm back to no cap. Relax. Hair ain't settled, man. So covered up. Few reasons I love hoodies, man. One, keep my neck warm, keep my ears warm. Two, anonymity free. Because man, how folks grew up. Hoodies, comfort, man. We got comfort food. Hoodies is like comfort food of lounge wear. Love it. Got a closet full of them. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all colors all around the world, pay attention when I'm spitting. I'm giving you straight facts. Bald heads beware. Welcome to No Cap. You seen the name of it today, man. Getting right to it. There's a lot of different, I want to say, like subtopics underneath topic of the day. That being weird equals normal. So there's a few different ways you can take that, but exactly how it's hitting you, that's how it's meant. To be weird is to be normal. And anybody who says they're normal and not weird, those are the weirdest ones. 8 billion people on Earth. You can't tell me that there's a group that's just like you. It's impossible. There's too many different variables, too many different things that can go right or go left, too many different decisions to be made for you to be in agreement with any particular people on everything. We all have our quirks. We all have our intrusive thoughts, impulses. So only difference between weird people and quote unquote normal is, are you comfortable expressing yourself and being as authentic as possible? Really, as simple as that. Are you more worried about perception than you are about authenticity? Or does outward validation mean more than self validation? Interesting. I drown myself, man. Been thirsty all day. There's a few situations in which weird being normal kind of shows itself, but not directly as such. For example, social media. We've been dealing with the algorithm for years now. So pretty much get the gist of what's happening where there are hot button topics and certain stimuli that get more attention than others. So the algorithm's gonna take it and force feed it to everybody or as many people as possible because it's based on interactions. But the authentic material doesn't get the same level of attention or interaction as others. And it's gotten to the point where, because it's been invested in so heavily, it's hard to even word this. What used to be weird is now normal, and what used to be normal is now weird. Whereas the poles are reversed, and I'm using the word weird to basically be like a monolith of adjectives that could fit in to describe these instances. But situations like seeing a family reunion of anybody that you follow, doesn't even have to be in your family. To see that now would be weird, but to see a story about somebody losing their job or not working, not having any money, and like panhandling online or asking for help online, it's more normal, and that used to be weird. And these situations are more vast than that, but it's a specific example, and you're more likely to see it and react to it, and it's more normalized to you now than it was 10, 20 years ago, where it would be seen as a tragedy. Weird would be the word because it's out of the ordinary. You're not used to somebody going through such hardship and then being in such dire strait that they have to share it and communicate it in mass in order to re- remedy the situation. And now you see things that would have been normal. It's like, I wonder how that got there. Like, when's the last time you saw somebody post, "Oh, my child has good grades"? Not out of the ordinary, just performing well in school. Not often. How often would you see, okay, here's this neighborhood corner store we all go to. I appreciate them for being there. Staple of the community. Now, not often. But on the other hand, how often we see baby mama, baby daddy drama? Like personal situations, things that are supposed to be behind closed doors, nobody else's business. Those are weird instances. That's not how people were expected to behave, but now it's publicized so often that it's the new normal. So one side of it is to be weird is to be normal because we're all unique. But then on the other end, normal-ish is now the weird-ish, where the stuff that people looked at sideways, was frowned upon or not as openly public or acceptable to speak on. Now it's mundane, run of the mill, ordinary. And there are a few topics that automatically come to mind when I think about this, where one of them is conversation or the art of conversation. For somebody to have a different perspective than you, it used to be conversation for you to be able to approach each other's thought processes behind it. What led you there? What was the point? What built your perspective? Now, if you don't think exactly how I think, I don't want anything to do with you. There be no conversation between us. And that's weird because humans, we social animals, and to communicate, normal. So to express a level of intelligence to communicate your point, but to not want communication in return, it's weird behavior because you're presenting an idea, and regardless of truth or false, fiction or nonfiction, or any other perspective than the one you're presenting, this needs to be taken and respected as gospel, and you'll hear nothing else from anybody else, which is weird behavior because if that was your stance to begin with, why share? If you don't want conversation about it, and if you can't be talked down from it, you can't be persuaded otherwise, then why feel the need to share? You could just keep it to yourself and you be accomplishing the same thing. This is what I think, this is what I feel, and I'm gonna behave as such because of it. Compared to, I need you to know this, and even if you don't like it, I don't care, and you better think how I think. I I'm not privy to any corner of the world in which people openly accept that and that's normal. Weird to inflate your ego to a point where you feel a level of importance above others, or that your opinion is the end all be all. It's normal, but it shouldn't be. Again, weird. And we got to a point where it's hard to draw the lines because you got the majority on the other side of the line, and in society, majority rules. You got a majority on one side of the line arguing down logic, but then you got the logic on this side not even wanting to communicate it because it's been overruled. And that's that's kind of tough to deal with because you need gatekeepers in every situation, and the gatekeepers are supposed to be the ones with more knowledge. Because even though majority rules in certain cases, it's supposed to be a class of people with more information leading people towards the right information. That way, we all can be on an even playing field. But it got to the point where the people with more information don't, they just gatekeep the information instead of gatekeeping processes where I don't care whether you know it or not, because I don't care what happens to you or not. And the majority is going, well, somebody somewhere made the decision that this was cool. We agree that that's cool because they're the first one to express themselves. So now everybody else has to follow in, and we're not gonna fact check. We're not gonna double check, make sure it's the right thing to do. We're not gonna have any foresight to walk down the path and see where we end up from there. We're just gonna do it, and it just is what it is. That's it's so short sighted and really chaotic. And I try to keep myself from even following in on trends or waves like that. I need to know all the information I can gather as possible before I even partake in moving with a group. Because again, with normal being the new weird and weird being normal, if I see something normalized and a large group of people are supporting it, it's got to a point where now, at least to me, majority doesn't rule. If I see the majority following something, I have to, nah, it's got to be something wrong with it. There has to be something that hasn't been checked or information that hasn't been provided because majority of people are lazy as hell. So they didn't do the work. They just said it and then everybody followed. And that's the quickest way to get yourself jammed up. And not like anybody's gonna help you because they made the same decision. And that segues directly into, for example, COVID, right? The COVID situation. There was a large group of people that were given just a little bit of information of here's what COVID is, here's what our projected remedy is to it. Boom, what you gonna do about it? There were no options. There wasn't, you can research for yourself. Here's more information. It's just, we suggest that. So go ahead. Give folk an inch. They took them out. After whatever initial hubbub came about and propaganda popped up, the ideology of COVID became more political than scientific or social. So, with the little information that was provided, folks took that and turned it into okay, they're doing a little research, they're going to have vaccines available. And before I get into it, hey, whatever decision you make is a decision you make. It's nobody's right to tell you what to do with your body or what decision you make. But I always 100% around the board to anybody and everybody suggest do research for yourself, communicate with other people who are doing research for themselves, gather information, and repeat that process over and over until you feel like you're informed enough to make the decision. And then respect others who are going through the same process. It went from, okay, we have a few vaccines that are going to be created by these companies to, okay, here's what the purpose of these vaccines are. To, and short form as well, these are optional. To, if you don't get these vaccines, you don't care about your loved ones, you don't care about the people around you, you're the worst kind of person possible. And somebody with no bias looking at it going, okay, when COVID hit, it affected everybody the same. Just this is the disease. You're at risk of getting it. At that point, we're all on the same scale. Then people start taking into account their health and their history, their genetic makeup. And these people aren't all on the same intellectual playing field. Once it gets to the point where we're all, the only thing we have in common is, boom, you're all human. This disease affects humans. From it to turn into, boom, you need to get this vaccine from people that we don't know, but sources that we don't really trust, but they have an answer, to instant Salem witch trials, the people who didn't get it, just logically didn't make sense. Because from my perspective, right, there's already a distrust of the government. And there's an even bigger distrust of the pharmaceutical industry. Their job is to make money, not provide factual information in order to make money, and not to give or create cures, because treatments make more money than cures. All logic. All this is logic. In order to make money, it's easier to keep a problem going than to cure it, because then you got to find a new problem to cure. So for people whose intent wasn't on the up and up, for them to provide information such as that to people who aren't intellectual enough to ask the question back or ask any questions back on the validity of these options, and then to just receive them. The information that was given immediately after vaccines were provided or starting to be rolled out was, you need to get vaccinated. It will not prevent you, and you can Google it. These are all things that are being said. Vaccines will not prevent you from getting COVID. They just will give you a chance at having less long term difficulties or any long term symptoms. I'm like, okay, so the vaccine, I'll take it. And regardless of whether I take it or not, chances are I'm going to get COVID. There is some of a chance. It wasn't rolled out with a long enough time span in order to even bring up quality information or quality data on, this is the percentage chance that you have of having long term difficulties afterward. There wasn't a long enough runway to even develop that information. So it's more so, in layman's terms, If you take this, better chances than not that you might not suffer more. Okay, so that's the pros of it. The cons, it takes decades normally to prevent or to present a vaccine that's has minimal or less destructive side effects than the initial issue. And even still, with a lot of the vaccines, we're still looking up what side effects they have and if they affect other areas of life that we weren't considering before. But that's a conversation for another day. With the vaccines, usually they take a long runway in order to determine what side effects, who it affects, why it affects them, how it affects them, and whether the results of having it are worse than the results of dealing with issue A was to begin with. With COVID, there was none of that. It's just this is here now, so we need answers now. So the information and the data that would usually be collected in developing something like that was non-existent. So it's just, hey, take this today, and we'll find out tomorrow. With that being like a huge question mark on, hey, I can get COVID and deal with this, or I can get COVID and deal with something because of the vaccine. It seemed like a reasonable concern to have for people who didn't want to take vaccines. But immediately, propaganda came out where if you don't take it, you're putting your loved ones at risk. Everybody needs to be vaccinated in order to protect babies, elders, and people who are, what's the word? Immuno at higher risk, basically. I ain't no nurse, man. But people who are already at higher risk than others, if you don't take it, you're basically putting them at higher risk. And as somebody with a public school education, I was taught that herd immunity, which is what we kept slowly being ushered towards, or the idea is what we were being ushered towards, was an entire population dealing with a seismic event or, let's say, pandemic, and all of us going through the exact same situation, and then survival of the fittest from there. That means everybody dealing with the exact same situation. And then, got it, immunocompromised. Whoever wasn't immunocompromised or at a higher safety risk, they might not make it, but everybody else is already, our bodies have adapted. There were at least three companies who created vaccines, and each vaccine was made of different ingredients that weren't even COVID. So even with the vaccines, you still had to deal with COVID. So that's four different situations being presented to you where you just get COVID, get this vaccine, that vaccine, this vaccine. And then from each of those, there's a different situation. So instead of door one, which was herd immunity and everybody just dealing with it, you now have people who are dealing with it, but with this vaccine, dealing with it with that one. And because it's a DNA situation, it will get introduced into your DNA and then it would mutate. So now you got somebody who, let's just say you have a family of four, You got mom, dad, child, grandma. Grandma's immunocompromised. And each person has a different vaccine. The child and the two parents both have, they all three got different vaccines. Each person is going to deal with COVID different because of the vaccines in their body. And because it's a different result internally, it's going to mutate into a different strain, and new strains are going to develop. And then you're going to pass those strains on. So instead of just one event, you now have multiple events. And that's just with that family. So in that family, you can have 3 to 4 different strains of COVID you're dealing with. Again, I'm no scientist. Somebody can break it down to me and tell me if I'm wrong or right. But simple science says that when it enters your DNA and you got different factors and variables coming into play, variables change the scientific method so that the process is the same. All I'm saying that is those people are all in the same family. Now you got people with different families in different parts of the world, different genetic makeups, different levels of health with different vaccines, developing different strains, and then passing that along. Compared to no vaccine, everybody gets COVID, and then whatever happens, happens. Because what happens is instead of just one event in the body adapting, COVID never disappeared because there's always new strain because it's continued to evolve because there's always new factors being presented. You follow me? And because there's always new factors being presented, you're continuously putting each other at risk. None of these situations were considered when people are going, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, you hate people. Like you hate your family if you don't get it. And that entire situation to come around and say is for somebody to think for themselves completely through that situation of here's what I know, here's what we don't know, here's what I need to know before even considering this situation. And then you go through those processes, you get all your information, you gather the information, and you go, I'm not going to make that decision because it's not the best decision for me. It's the same to what I was saying earlier about politics. Is here's what I think. I don't care what you think. You need to think how I think, or else. And now we're here years later, and all of the after effects are still showing up, still popping up. There are people still dealing with long-term COVID where their bodies are still being ravaged. You got a lot of people who passed, regardless of vaccinated or not, because their bodies simply were not going to be able to withstand it. And all of these results that were already present and all of these situations that were already gonna come to pass, all of these were wrapped up in a gift box and dropped on the doorstep of anybody who chose not to get vaccinated. But now that we're getting the data back that we didn't have when the options were being presented, we're getting the information back that nah, you shouldn't have did that because the effects of the vaccines are worse than COVID. Whatever you're going to deal with COVID, you were going to deal with regardless. But now that you've invited the vaccine into the situation, now whatever issues you had were exacerbated. And if you didn't have an issue, you now have a long term issue that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life as well. There were no apologies to the people who said, I'm not getting vaccinated, and here's why. A lot of course, there are a lot of people who are going to get the vaccination just because I'm being told to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm being threatened. I'm going to lose my job if I don't do it. I have no way to prepare myself to be jobless all because I'm not vaccinated. So I'm just going to do it. Anybody in the health industry, feel for you. But then on the other end, the people who chose not to do it, I'm gonna lose my job, or I don't think this is the best move for me. There's too much, there's too many unknowns in this situation. It, there was no open apology to those people. It just was, you disagreed when we were telling you to think like us. Now after the fact, we're being told that we didn't have any of this information and that this was a terrible situation to begin with. There are no reparations. There's no open apologies. There's no admittance that, hey, we were wrong. And that's weird. Folks chose to think for themselves and do for themselves what which would be normal. Survival instinct is, I need to gather all the information logic I can get in order to make the best decision for myself long term. That's normal. To be told, hey, this is what you're gonna do or else, and not think twice about it is not normal. So the normal people were seen as weird and outcasted, but now on the back end, everybody who tried to do the outcasting and were pulling up with the pitchforks and witch hunting, the behavior after the fact, to not admit when you're wrong, especially after being aggressively rude, weird. But if you were to look back at it right now and consider the situation of how COVID unfolded, not just how the pandemic unfolded, but how people were behaving, how the information was being presented, how decisions were being made, the consequences that would be being presented for specific decisions being made, and in the aftermath of what information came to light after the fact, or who was in the right or in the wrong. I hate to simplify it to that, but who made the best decision for themselves and who didn't. When you consider all of that, what part of that was natural? What part of that was normal? And what part of the entire situation was just weird? I don't know, man. It couldn't have been me. I'm I like to think through these situations as much as possible. And that just being the most flagrant one, because we have enough time between the initial event and the aftermath to today to be able to look back and go, hmm, what would I have done different? What would have I done the same? How were people behaving around me? Because the best predictor of future events is previous events. And a lot of weird behavior that happens, and like palms get sweaty and backsides get tight. A lot of people start behaving real weird, and that's the real them. But to get away from the serious, because that COVID conversation, despite the fact that I'm openly comfortable discussing it, there is still ma- vast majority of environments in which people refuse to discuss it or don't even want to be around the discussions because of the stances they took or the discomfort that comes with stances people take and how aggressive they are about taking them stances. Which is fine, but we here on No Cap. We're gonna have this conversation and we're gonna be as direct as possible. We're going to be as direct as possible because authenticity is the only way to actually bond and communicate. is super. It's super weird how many people don't want to be weird. And it's when you tie it in previous conversations on previous episodes, every everything is like so backwards. Like in the age of social media, a lot of people that you meet, they present themselves as special above others. But on the same coin, other side of the coin, I'm special on one side. On the other side, I'm not weird. Everything I do is normal. How can you be special if you behave how everybody else behaves? In a week, you'll be surprised how many people, especially if you meeting people, new people, how many people will provide you with the same conversation, especially if you're meeting new people. Hey, how you doing? Where you from? When is your birthday? What's your sign? You smoke, drink, this, that. What's your Instagram? Follow me. The same, you have the same conversation, but people still in their heads believe themselves to be special, but without being weird. You can't have one without the other. In order for you to be all that you can be, which is never going to be special, nobody is special. Again, I'll say it over and over. All of us are unique. Nobody is special. We're all human. Nobody above, nobody below. You're unique. You're not special. And you're weird. And if you think you're not weird, chances are you're weird as fuck. Like, there's no way around that. There's being weird and embracing it, being yourself, and there's fighting it. And it's like trying to plug the bottom of a bowl with your fingers. You got 10 different holes spread across the entire bottom, and you're gonna take your fingers and just plug these two holes. Well, guess what? These other eight gonna be bigger than the first two because it's not natural. You're weird a little bit, but are you comfortable with it? Your comfort level, your comfort level with being weird is what makes you less weird. Being confident in your quirks and within your different characteristics is what makes your weird less weird. If you like to eat salmon and peanut butter sandwiches, weird, real weird. But exercise, I'm a bodybuilder. I need to get as much protein in me as possible. Still weird, but less weird. Compared to, on the other end, dude, I'm an influencer. Who do you influence? How do you influence? Man, I couldn't even tell you, man. You just gotta follow me and see. Weird, turn to more weird. Embrace it. You are weird. Everybody is weird. Only difference being is some people try to categorize it and flip it from being weird to special, where it's okay for things to just be as they are. Like for a lot of people who I know this affects autism. Kids who are autistic, even adults who are autistic, different from us, weird from us, but finding a way to accept the fact that it's different. So That's weird. This is their normal. Don't think like you, don't act like you, don't behave like you. So it might seem weird on how they process things compared to how quote unquote regular people would process it. But normalize. You have to accept it and embrace it in order to empower the situation and allow everybody else to grow and to flourish from the situation. Compared to, on the other end, a few mental illnesses where you gotta deny it. You like, the more you deny it, the weirder it gets. I have anxiety, but I don't say I have anxiety. Just feel funny. You, there's no way to escape that unless you embrace it. It becomes less weird, and it can become your normal. But when you just deny it, you ignore the symptoms, things pop up, situations worsen, and end up worse off than just coming to terms with what your situation is. And I say anxiety because there is a growing career field and industry with dealing with autism compared to the negligence of anxiety. And I know people who work in those fields, it's not the same. This one is not the same as that one. I don't care, bro. Just converse. You can give the information. We can all learn from it. Fine. But in this conversation, there aren't a, a growing number of professionals trying to figure out the ins and outs of anxiety. You aren't dealing with kids who have anxiety and teaching them how to deal with it. It's usually, hey, it's bubbled up into something huge and anxiety is at the root of the issue, or as an adult, it's just become a full fledged issue, and here's how we can help you deal with it. And all that to say is, it's not quote unquote normal. It's an alternative state of mind for us. It's not how the brain was supposed to develop, or how it was supposed to interact, or how it's supposed to receive certain stimuli. But when you come to terms with it and you understand it, you empower yourself and you embrace the weird until it becomes normal. When you don't do that, your normal is just weird because you're doing things with no understanding of why you're doing it. You have no way to come to terms with my life is seemingly a little bit chaotic. You got to inform yourself. You have to embrace your weird. One of the huge areas of life where folks used to really, I don't want to say like get out of pocket about it, but folks used to be real judgmental about people who watch anime. And I'm saying everybody who watched anime, if you were interested in these Japanese cartoons, you were considered weird. Regardless of how entertaining they were, it's not normal. So the judgment is coming. Ooh, but for the folks who embraced it, it started to show itself. Yeah, I appreciate it. Doesn't make me any different from anybody else. This is my type of weird. I am entertained by this foreign entertainment. They're whatever they got going on, I'm locked into it. You, but anybody that was alive and aware of Toonami every single person that watched Toonami like it's impossible to go around. So from white kids in the suburbs that just liked it to hood black folk that Dragon Ball Z, for example, like anime. But there were still stages to it because when Naruto came out, folks used to run down the hallway like that was weird, but they were comfortable with themselves. So hey, it's their weird. That's their normal. They don't care what you think about it. They're gonna run down the hallway with their heads down, with their wrists above their shoulders, sprinting, leaning forward. Ooh, do you? Fast forward now, man. Animated went mainstream. After you watch it, hey, just watch it. It's no longer weird now. It's normal. But it's still in the process of growing where the behaviors still pop up for people who don't watch it. You watch it, the people who don't watch it still look at folk differently, or a lot of them still have the urge to insult because it's different. I'm not watching that ish. Why you watch that? Ooh, it's anime watchers are used to it because folk are used to getting the vitriol and the pessimism for this hobby, used to it. And the lack of giving a fuck is really what drives things to grow and become more popular. Because the art of not giving a fuck is the biggest influence that you can have. On the other hand, women that watch the Zeus Network, those are like the grandbabies of women who used to watch Bad Girls Club. Nobody says anything about that being weird. You tune in every week to watch women argue with each other, tear each other down, and be as negative as possible to each other. But that's not weird. There is boxing, UFC, slap, bare knuckle fighting, wrestling, Olympic wrestling. There are so many different avenues you can watch people fight, but you're not interested in any of those, but you would like to watch these women just fight on the street for no reason at all. At least for no good reason. Just I perceive disrespect, so I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna lash out. Even though I'm outwardly disrespectful and I expect nobody to give the same energy in return. These type of shows and situations aren't seen as weird. Nobody in real life enjoys being around negative people. Nobody enjoys being around disrespectful people. It's not fun to be out and about amongst people who are fighting, knowing the repercussions that are going to come from behind it. But that's fine for entertainment. Doesn't get the same level of criticism, and because it doesn't get the same level of criticism, it bleeds into real life, where now folks just break out fighting anywhere. But it's still not criticized until a certain point where the same people who watch the show will be like, man, I don't want to be around that in real life. I don't want to see that. I'm done. It's not safe to go outside no more. It's starting to influence your personal life. So now things are getting weird for you. You allow this weird behavior to become normal to a point where now things are flipped around. You got to a point where you allowed it to happen, up to a point where is going to continue to grow and not be pointed out as weird. There's like pros and cons, and there's like balance that needs to be had where if the same criticism for anime would have been received for people who like certain type of reality shows, can't help but think what were the results that would have come from that? What would have risen to the top? What would have continued to grow? Never know, because normal is the new weird, and weird is the new normal. Watching cartoons honestly was normal. Well, you're a teenager watching cartoons. I'm a teenager that is choosing to watch cartoons instead of what else? Porn? What else is driven toward teenagers? Where you're an adult watching cartoons. What entertainment is driven toward adults? The drama and hassle of being an adult? Who wants to see that? Compared to fights, drama, we're going to perpetuate that and we're going to make it cool. We're going to pass it down from just adult entertainment to it's for everybody. Even the people who don't understand that entertainment is just entertainment. So, from the kids who are running down the hallway like ninjas, the flip side is now you got kids going through life just fighting whoever and disrespecting whoever. One is weird about the other one. Just gotta approach life and be 100%, man. Like you gotta be honest about what's going on, what you see, how you feel about it, who you are, how you like to present yourself, and are you as authentic as you can be? Because at the end of the day, these days, it don't really matter what side of the fence you land on, because the fence fell, the fence fell flat. Like everybody's on both sides of the fence. Weird is normal, and normal is weird. Only thing that's up for question now is how comfortable are you with where you at? Okay, man. See you tomorrow.